Hey, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast. Today, we're talking about hope for more wonder. And it's going to be a great conversation. Last week, we talked about hope for more adventure. And this is kind of a two-part series that we want to jump into, that there's something beyond just taking a risk and having an adventure, but actually being in awe of God's creation and how we were designed to live in this planet, you know?
Right.
And on Sunday, our church kind of spoke about a very familiar passage, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son. But it took us back to John chapter 1 that talks about the creation of the world, and then took us back to Genesis about this habitat that God created for us. And there's something to be had by really noticing what is around you, the creation of God, the sun, the animals, the flowers that we see, that really spark something in our nature that bring rest and peace and joy to us in a new way that nothing, really almost nothing else can.
Right. It's like deeply spiritual and at the same time physical, right? Because it's by definition the physical thing, but it's amazing how close the spiritual is to that experience, the experience of wonder.
Yeah, it is. It's such an experience when you think about just being out in nature. And you know, there's times when I think we were kids, when wonder is it's everything is brand new.
Yeah, I think kids are good at wonder. They get it, right? Like it comes second nature. We kind of lose it over time.
Yeah, we do. And I think especially as adults, we get so busy with life and the hurriedness of life that we really forget to lift up. And there's so many scriptures in the Bible, you know, lift your eyes to the hills, even the hills, that imagery, you know, where does my help come from? Reminds us that our help comes from, you know, the King of Kings, right?
The hills actually drawing your mind back to God and his provision.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we want to do today in this podcast is really pause for a minute to uncover some of the ways that you and I have experienced the awe of God, the wonder of God, as we've experienced just being in nature, noticing the little things of life. And for me, I remember when I was a kid, during recess, if you guys can remember this, in elementary school, you know, back in the day, we would have to create our own kind of fun, you know?
Right.
And so we had this bush that was in our playground area, and it was it had these amazing green leaves on it. And if you looked deep enough, you could uncover under one of the leaves these large green bugs. And I believe they're called stink bugs. I don't really know what the scientific name.
It's fun for kids to say. Stink bug sounds cool.
It's a stink bug. And for some reason, we called them voom bugs because they
that's
also
even more fun to say.
Flew off the leaf somehow. But it was a treasure hunt to try to find these green bugs. And we would take our lunch Tupperware and we would put grass and little habitats in there and collect these stink bugs together. And I remember me and my friend Lydia, we would collect these bugs during recess and create these habitats and save them in our desks. Like, how gross is that?
Yeah.
You know, but it was so exciting for us that we had these tiny little cool looking bugs that we would get to kind of feed and keep as pets. But that, when I think about like small wonders that come to mind, these collecting bugs was one of my childhood memories.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can resonate with that. I think we all collected bugs. Yeah. The one that comes to mind for me when I was maybe third grade, so what would that be, 8 years old, 9 years old, something like that. I went to the ocean for the first time. We went out to Ocean Shores, the Pacific Ocean, and I had never seen anything like that before. I thought I had, right? Because I had been to like the beach, right, at Lake Washington, right? Like just a lake. And so I thought I'd been to the beach, and I went to the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, and it was times 1,000, right? And the beach is just a mile long as far as you can see and like 100 yards deep, right? And the waves are so huge. And then the sunset.
Wow.
And I was just enamored with the sunset. And it coincided with the first time I'd ever been allowed to take my own pictures on a camera, right? Like we had one of those little rectangle cameras. I don't even know what you call them, but real
Yeah.
film cameras. Younger listeners will not relate, right? But it was a real film camera. And I had a roll of 12 pictures, and I took all 12 pictures
Right.
of the sunset. And you know me, Beck, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm a frugal person in everything.
Yeah.
I'm not the one that's just going to blow my whole roll of camera for nothing.
Yeah.
But I was so overwhelmed with awe
Wow.
at the beauty of that sunset. I didn't want to lose it. I didn't want to miss it. So I took the whole roll on that. Now, when I got the film developed, it wasn't as majestic as I had anticipated.
Never is. Why is that?
And I had 12 pictures that were pretty much the same thing. But I resonate with what the Psalms say. In Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God. Because we do see God's glory in the wonder of creation. And it's a small piece of God's glory, admittedly. Like we only get it's like a tiny 1% sliver of God's glory.
Yeah.
But it's a clear picture, a clear piece
Wow.
of God's glory. It's undeniable that yes, this is the glory of God.
Yeah, I think, if you're listening and you wonder, like, is God real? Is the creation story true? It only takes a second. I mean, just look around you at the impossibilities around us. And I know you and I have gotten to travel different places around the world. And to see some of the wonders of the world is mind-boggling. The first time we went to Bryce Canyon and saw those, what are they called?
Hoodoos or something like that? I think it's called
something like
hoodoos.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
it just looks like a scene out of Star
Yeah,
Wars.
the high stacks of rocks that actually eroded away from a bigger rock. Hoodoos.
Man, and even our kids were like, we've never seen anything like this. And you just see the fingerprints of a God, a designer God,
Yeah.
And I remember even there was a time in my life when I was feeling kind of blah in our season, and I was kind of upcycling furniture. I think you remember this season of life.
Sure, I do.
And I was in my garage, and I was like, God, thank you so much for this free furniture that I get to upcycle. But there's nothing eternal about this job that I'm doing right now. And what I felt the Lord say in my heart is, what do you mean it's not eternal? When you create, you bless your creator God. And he said, just enjoy me as you create, and there's something about enjoying our creation, what you do in your job, what you do with your hands, what you do, that's inventive in a way that mirror images our creator God who created everything that we see around us. And it helps us to know who he is. I mean, he's so creative. I even think about, do you need a creative miracle in your life? Like God is so creative. If he can create Bryce Canyon, if he can create the 7 wonders of the world, just I guess some of those are man-made, but just
There's natural wonders.
yeah,
we get
creating
you.
the mountains and all of that. How much more can he do for you?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
there's this passage that Jesus speaks in the Sermon on the Mount that says, consider the lilies, right? And that word consider, just ponder, think about, like really pay attention to the lilies of the field. And, God says, if I can clothe them, how much more can I clothe the king of,
Yeah, he says, let that draw your attention back to God's provision.
Exactly, right? So everything, the point of this podcast is for us to go, don't neglect the nature that surrounds you, especially as we're entering into springtime.
Yeah, and I think it's an often neglected but important part of spiritual life to have wonder in the world. And I think there's reasons why we overlook it. One is just because it's not specifically a believer activity to have wonder, right? You don't have to believe in God to go, wow, the world's amazing,
Yeah,
right?
true.
there's a depth of spirituality when we do connect the creation with the creator.
That's
but I
right.
think because it's so familiar to everyone, we as Christians can almost feel like, that's okay. Yeah, that's not as important because anybody can do that, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's a new depth of worship that happens when we realize we have a unique insight to our creator and to the creation by knowing them both.
That's so good.
Right. And it's a really important part of spiritual life. I think also another reason is it happens outside the walls of the church, right? When we think about corporate singing,
Yeah.
we understand, oh yeah, that's an important part of worship because it happens inside the walls of our church.
Right.
But we don't take time during our weekly worship gathering to appreciate creation.
True.
Maybe at a camp, maybe at a retreat, something like that. And those are really meaningful and important times. But I think that it's a really overlooked and important and underrated spiritual practice, spiritual principle. I like to do prayer walks.
Yeah.
I wish I did more prayer walks. And even as I'm reflecting on this, I think back to the importance of a prayer walk habit that I had going pretty strong for a while. Maybe, I guess this was probably through last spring, summer, and fall, and then lost it at the winter.
Yeah.
The winter's, it is tough to appreciate the creation during the winter sometimes. But I was using the ACTS prayer model. If you're familiar with this acronym, it stands for adoration, confession, thanksgiving, and supplication. And those are maybe clunky words to just think, to describe what we do in prayer. But I tried to discipline myself to really focus in on that adoration piece. So here's what I did. And I did this pretty well for a while, and it was really meaningful. I'm glad we're doing this podcast because I'm going to bring this back in. For 50% of my prayer time, and let's just use an hour. That's a long time to pray, but I did do that once or twice.
Yeah.
Pray for an hour. For half the hour, I just only allowed myself to express adoration and confession.
Wow.
So that's 30 minutes of adoring God and adoring his creation because I'm on a prayer walk, right? And so I tried to challenge myself. I like challenging myself. Can you tell?
Yeah.
To appreciate things that I had never appreciated before.
That's so good.
To look at the trees and express adoration to God. God, what an amazing way you've designed those branches. What an amazing way you've caused the colors to work together. You've incredibly cooperated the high plants with the low plants, right? And what I found was it was incredibly easy to appreciate things I had never appreciated before, right? Like that sounds impossible,
right?
But when I looked at the wonder of creation, it was actually very easy, and it reminded me back to that psalm we referred to earlier, Psalm 19:1, that says, "The heavens declare the glory of God," and then verse 2 says, "Day after day they continue to speak." They keep telling a story about God's goodness and creation. And that was enriching in itself. But my pattern of prayer went like this: 50% just on adoration and confession and mixing in some, "Lord, I'm sorry for selling you short," or "I confess this sin to you." And then I took 25% of that time for silence. So 15 minutes where I didn't say anything and even tried to clear and quiet the thoughts in my own head. And I found that after a time of expressing adoration to God, his voice spoke really vibrantly to me.
Wow.
That those were really times where I felt God speaking in a way that I don't always do, right? And maybe if you're listening and you feel like you're one of those people who has heard about God speaking to people, but have never had that experience, you've never felt like he's spoken to you yourself, take some time to express awe, wonder, and adoration to God and then listen.
That's so good.
I think that's a key that unlocks a door that's hard to do otherwise.
Yeah.
Then the last quarter of my prayer time was what we normally think of as prayer, thanksgiving and supplication, asking God for things. But there was a joy that came and an urgency that came, and it really structured my prayer time in a way that was a blessing for the rest of my day. And I think it sprouted out of wonder.
Wow, that's so good. Yeah, I really do think that we lack the set aside time to really connect God to creation, like you're talking about, in this very intentional way. And we're not just talking about, going kayaking this summer. That's always fun, or doing some activity outdoors. We're talking about almost a intentional meditation, an enjoyment of God's creation and thinking about Him.
Right.
When you're doing that. And just the other day, we're living in kind of a cool winter season. It feels like spring is here early.
Right.
And we've got this pink tree that's blossoming in our backyard. The sun was out, so it was warm enough to sit outside. And I also just was able to sit out there and just close my eyes, let the sun just warm my face, and then just to all of a sudden I was aware that the birds were chirping. I hadn't heard them before, I just wasn't even paying attention to them. And just hearing the song of the bird and scriptures coming to mind, like His eye is on the sparrow. He cares for the sparrow. And, as scriptures come to mind, you really do begin to just worship God. You sense the smallness of who you are, the bigness of who He is, And I remember you and I used to live on Snoqualmie Ridge, which is near Snoqualmie Falls, one of the most beautiful places to live, I think, on this planet. Mountains all around us, but we lived in such a busy community. In fact, we could barely even meet our neighbors because they would come home from work. All of us would just drive right into the garage.
Yeah.
The garage would close behind us, and we would just stay in the house. And you wouldn't really even meet your neighbors, which, by the way, your neighbor is also God's creation.
God's creation. That's a good point.
And so sometimes even beyond nature, we forget to enjoy the ones we're with.
Yeah.
Like as I'm looking at your face, enjoy. I enjoy your face, by the way.
Thank you very much.
But the smile lines, which I love so much, that are on your face, the laughter, the kind of laughter, noticing the people that you're with. That's also the wonder of creation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
To really enjoy the people that you're with, their personalities, the love, the joy. And I think that's why God, created all that He did, and He said it was good, but then He created mankind, and that was the best of His creation. And we're, as you watch plants grow and you watch things sprout, let it be a reminder to you that this is the work that God cultivates in our hearts. It's the work that God cultivates in our marriages, in our friendships, to really stop and see the little things, be reminded of the small wonders of God in all of His creation.
Yeah, that's so good. I just got back from Montana. Went away there to see some friends there for a few days. And this is Kalispell near Glacier National Park, an easy place to be reminded of God's majesty and to instill wonder, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just this flat valley surrounded by huge jagged mountains and snow. And obviously it's Glacier National Park, right?
Right.
It is an amazing place. But one thing I was reminded of and noticed on the flight there is what a unique opportunity flying is to appreciate God's wonder, because you get to see it from a new perspective. But have you noticed this, that there is a trend that people close their blinds on the airplane more than they used to? Have you noticed that?
Yes, no one looks out the window anymore. That's so true.
And at first I thought maybe it was just me because I'm kind of a kid at heart and I want to look out the window. But then I thought, no, this is new. Right? It must be new that people didn't used to close their blinds this much. So I kind of, did a little Google research and found that, yes, in fact, it is much more common. And they said specifically for American travelers. And I even found like on Reddit where there are European travelers that are asking, why do Americans close their blinds so much? And the reason that was listed that I, as far as my research goes, is because of the increase in electronic screens.
Wow.
That when you're looking at your phone or your tablet or your laptop, the window is an interference, right? It's glare. I want to watch a movie. I want to play a game. I want to check social media. I want to do phone things, right?
Yeah.
And so let's close the windows because it's disrupting my screen.
My screen
and
time.
when I read that, I went, uh-oh,
Yeah.
right? Like, because like, it's easy for me to point fingers and go, oh, you people, right? Like, you're on your phone all the time. You should look out the window. How much am I on my phone or
Right.
my computer that I'm not appreciating wonder
Wow.
because I'm distracted by something that I don't appreciate at all, right? Like, I actually
Yeah.
resent a little bit.
Yeah.
And it made me think about all the times that I could be experiencing the wonder of God, that travel
Mm.
could be worship, that commute to work could be worship if I
Wow.
looked up.
Wow. Yeah. When you think about, like, obviously you could, at your fingertips, Google a picture of the most beautiful places on earth.
Yeah.
But that is synthetic wonder,
Right.
and I never look at a gorgeous picture of where, some vacation beach in Tahiti or wherever, and never has my spirit leapt at the glory of God.
Yeah.
When I look at a photo, right? I think, oh, that's cool. I'd love to go somewhere. I have this longing in my heart to be present there.
Right. Not to look at more photos.
Not to look at more photos, because I know in my spirit I'm not connecting in a way that I know I could be. And so when we're on our tablets, our phones, all of this stuff that we're seeing is synthetic wonder, And it's true that when you're in God's creation, present with Him, something happens that's miraculous in your heart.
Yeah.
You witness the glory of God in a different way. Or, I'm just simply, this is kind of random to even bring this in, but think about the wrestle with pornography, right? It's a synthetic wonder, right? Instead of enjoying the one you're with, the spouse you're with,
Right.
the beauty, the lines, the aging, like all of that is part of God's wonder, His creation, and the world has offered us all sorts of synthetic wonders that I think, to your point, we've closed the window and we're trapped in a world that doesn't bring the glory of God to life.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you tied that in, and even kind of the beauty of aging, right? Because I appreciate the seasons changing, especially when they change to the warmer seasons. That's the ones I like, spring and summer.
Yeah.
And so our daughter is going to school in Southern California, right?
Wow.
And so after
Lucky girl.
Well, that's right. That's what we thought, right? That's what we feel, because when she came back, we were like, oh, it must be incredible, right? To just live summer every day. And she went, no, it's not. I couldn't wait to get back here, right? Like, remember, she came home and she was like, oh, I can see my breath because it's so cold. I haven't seen that in 10 months,
She
right?
missed the season.
She missed the changes.
Wow.
And I love the summer, but I had to admit from her testimony and others that what I love is not just the summer, but the change to summer.
That's true.
And I think that applies to a lot of different aspects of life, including what you're talking about, right? Like, I appreciated your beauty when you were young, but I appreciate your beauty even as you age.
Yeah.
But there is a risk of synthetic wonder usurping that and taking away the appreciation for change.
Yeah,
that is
that's so
directed by
good.
our Heavenly Father.
Wow. It's so incredible just to think about this. And so our challenge to you this week is get outside somewhere, experience the wonder of creation, experience the wonder of God in the small things. If you've got little kids, go out again and dig for worms, or
Stink bugs.
look for the stink bugs, look for the small things, even in your spouse or your friendships, the people that you're around. Notice their laughter, notice their personalities, notice their eye color, things like that. And just experience the wonder of God's creation, and some kind of hope comes alive in your heart as you experience the glory of God in the small things.
Yeah, it's so good. You said appreciate their eye color because you have the changing eye color, the hazel eyes.
I do.
Sometimes green, sometimes brown. I appreciate that.
There's no songs written about hazel eyes, though. So, babe, that's on you.
Hazel eyes. No, it's hungry eyes. Never mind. Hey, why don't we just take this opportunity to pray? What more appropriate time would there be?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lord, we thank you for your wonder. Thank you that you are a constantly creating and creative God. And thank you for putting that imprint on us and in us, giving us the desire to create, but also a desire to appreciate your wonder. And I pray that you
Mhm.
would help us, your servants, your people, and even people who are just opening their eyes to their belief and dedication to you. I pray
Mhm.
that you would help us to be overwhelmed by the wonder of creation. We love you. We
Mhm.
appreciate you, and we trust you to lead us on in the right way. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for joining us today on the Hope for More podcast. We hope you'll join us next time.